to the Alexa Show. I am Alexa Sirbodidio, your host, and just so excited for another episode of the Alexa Show. Tonight's show is going to be a special edition of Ask Alexa. I will be answering questions from you, the viewers, here online. Again, all the names are anonymous and will be confidential. Let's start with our first question. Dear Ask Alexa Therapy, my 16-year-old daughter's behavior has been changing drastically. I remember once you had said, these are red flags to watch out for. What is the next step? Yes, I did say a few shows back and also again on all my radio shows to look for different red flags. And one of the major red flags is drastic changes in the behavior. And what happens is we want to check into behaviors with sleep patterns, with friends, with eating patterns, with when they are coming home, when they are not, if they're not leaving the house, also changes in their mood. Sometimes they can be very, very excited about something, then very, very down. So I think the first step that you should be able to do is, if you can, sit down with your daughter and ask her what is going on. And I know this can be a hard situation and a tough dialogue to have, and I'm not sure what type of relationship you do have with your daughter, but I think let's try with opening up this dialogue and not being discouraged if it doesn't happen easily or if there's a lot of resistance. Especially at 16 years old, there will always probably be resistance. But I think it's so important to let her know that you are acknowledging this, that you are saying, okay, I've noticed a change in your behavior and I'm concerned. And that is such a big first step for anybody to realize that somebody is watching us and are worried about us. So I think also asking your daughter, what's going on with her friends when you're saying drastic changes in behavior? Is she changing her friends? Is she getting rid of old friends? Does she not hang out with her friends at all? Because especially at 16, girls can be a lot cliquey. So I'd want to know what's going on with her friend group in general. And if she's had a friend group for a long period of time, how are they changing? Does she still keep in contact with them? And also, I would believe, is check her social media. And I know that's a huge no-no for a lot of teenagers, and people are saying, what about privacy? But I find out when there's safety involved, we sometimes have to step on their toes and check their social media, which is so, so important. And when you're saying the drastic changes, especially if they're happening quickly, I really would want you to sit down very soon than later with her and be able to discuss with her. Also start looking at, is she getting rid of prized possessions? Is she doing things she's still enjoying? Does she play sports? Does she take music? Is she in an acting class? I know a lot of times, maybe also with the pandemic, people aren't actually going to these places, but if they're online, I would still make sure she's showing up. Because a lot of times teenagers will say, I'm showing up, I'm checking in, but when you find out they really didn't show up. So I'd want to know, when was the first and last time she showed up to an activity, either online or in person. And what that will do is start giving you the timeline of when this is beginning, when it was just going along, and when did it really get bad. And I think that's very, very important to know, that timeline. And also, has there been any life major changing events since this behavior has been changing? Has there been a move? Have they changed schools? Has there been a divorce? Has there been different friends being lost? Has there been a death in the family? These are also important to make sure to see if maybe their reaction, their change in their behavior is to a significant event. If not, I would also look into maybe substance abuse. Do you know if your daughter uses alcohol? Has she been trying any type of drugs? And I think that's so, so important. I know it's difficult to think about that. And if you ask your teens, they might not be very open about it. But I think it's important to really look into that. And this is the time where you want to be the parent. And I know sometimes it's not cool, and 16-year-olds want to have drinks and they want to do all of that. I get that. But I think since this behavior change is so drastic, I'd be very worried about, is there drug use? Is there alcohol use? And I think also, as a precaution, is there any prescription medications in the house? And if so, I would definitely check if the medication is still filled or if medication is being lost. And if there's medication there, not saying you're blaming your children for this, but just to be on the safe side, I would put the medication away where they can't reach it. Also, I want to look at your teen and check her body if you can, her arms, her wrists, her legs, in between her toes, if there's any cutting or self-harm. And I know this can be a scary idea to grasp, but a lot of times when there is drastic changes in behavior, I'd want to look at substance abuse. I also would want to look at, is there cutting behaviors to see if there's that self-harm. And a lot of times self-harm is a reaction. It can be a response to a loss, to feeling out of control, to feeling too much pain, to being able to center and focus on themselves, that they feel empowered and not on the pain. And I know that sounds really confusing and doesn't make sense. But again, when someone is going through something, they're not thinking rationally. So I think it's very important to really go through the checklist. Also, what are their mood swings like? I would also keep some documentation, maybe a journal, an inventory of their different mood swings. Are there certain times during the day do you notice they're very sad? Are there certain times where they're very excited? Are they sleeping? Are they sleeping through the night? Are they staying up all night and sleeping all day? I think these are really important things to observe, but also asking your child, your teenager, what is going on? And if the drastic changes keep going and going, I would recommend that you reach out to your pediatrician and let them know, because she's still not 18 years old. I would reach out to your pediatrician, have your pediatrician sit down and speak to your teen or with both of you, and then also maybe reaching out to a therapist. I wouldn't let these things slide and think that, okay, they're going to heal themselves on their own. A lot of times there's something going on. It's not that it can't be treated, but we don't want this teenager to go through this alone. There's no need for it. And a lot of times people think, oh, they're just young and they'll get over it. I really don't stand behind that. I believe people need support. They need tools and they need resources. So again, the next step would be is sitting down and talking to your teen, seeing if she will be open to having a discussion and identifying what's going on. If not, start observing the different checklists and seeing what's going on with her behavior. But at any time, if you feel her safety is in danger, I would immediately take her to be evaluated either by her pediatrician, a psychiatrist, or a therapist. So again, thank you so much for writing in, and thank you for all your questions. Again, send any questions to info@alexatherapy.com. Again, send any questions to info@askalexatherapy.com. Let's go on to our second question. Dear Ask Alexa Therapy, I am a 45-year-old single male who has had depression for many years. I've noticed lately my thoughts are getting darker and darker. Some of my thoughts are even reaching the idea of me not wanting to be here anymore. What's going on? Unfortunately, this is a very common question. And during the pandemic, I've noticed it's been increasing and increasing. And as with the question before, I also want to start looking at safety. A lot of times, those type of thoughts, self-harm and suicidal ideation and actual suicide attempts are different factors. So I really want to break down each one of them. So when you're saying you're having these thoughts and they're getting darker, and that you don't feel like at times you want to be here anymore, when you're having those thoughts, I would say to yourself, or as a client that would come into my office, 1, you would not act on it. 10, you would act on your thoughts. What number would you say? If you're giving yourself a 5 or a 6 or anything above, I would immediately say, go to your doctor. And if you can't see your own therapist, a psychiatrist, or your regular doctor, I would go to the ER to have an evaluation, because I'd be very concerned that you're really higher than a 5 for wanting to act out. Then I would ask you, do you have a plan? How would you, if you have those thoughts yet, how would you end your life? And if you do have a plan, How much access do you have to that plan? If it is a bridge, if it is a weapon, a knife, how much access do you have to that? And if you really do have a lot of access and you feel like you would really, above a 5, act on it, again, I would say seek help immediately. But also, I would say, who's your support team? Who have you spoken to about this? Because I find so many times with my clients, they keep it inside and they feel like, I don't want to tell anybody about this. Sometimes they feel like it'll just go away, and others are ashamed by it. Some are also very frightened by it, which is very understandable. But the most important thing is to speak about it, to reach out to someone that you trust and let them know that you're struggling. So I really commend this viewer for writing in this question. This isn't easy, and I know it. And I know it's very hard, and what you're going through is very painful. But I'm here to let you know there is a way. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. And I really commend you for reaching out and sending this question in, because there are so many people that are suffering right now, pre-pandemic and now during the pandemic. And unfortunately, suicide rates have been increasing. So I think it's very important that we all have a plan, that we have a support team, and that we have an idea of what the next step would be. So I would go on to go more and more into these dark thoughts. When do they happen? Do they happen in the morning? Do they happen at night? Do they happen only after you're feeling disappointed? Are they after work? And I know, yes, you've been struggling with depression for a long time too. I'd also want to say, okay, how much is the depression those dark thoughts? And how much is it something else? How much is it more of a suicidal ideation? How much more is it of self-harm? When has it come that you feel like, okay, this is taking on something else other than just the depressive symptoms? And what's really important by doing that is you start empowering yourself to recognize your different red flags. You start to be able to say, I know when I'm having more than just a bad day. And to really be able to sit with yourself. And it doesn't happen overnight. It does take time to really be able to read yourself. So it's really saying, okay, what is this more than just having a bad day? What are the triggers for me? What are the red flags for me when I say, okay, this is just it's really serious. This is me just not, having a bad day at work or being upset or just having my usual depressive roller coaster. So I think it's really important, one, to start identifying that. And then two, seeking help. If you have not already been seeing a therapist or a psychiatrist, have an evaluation. Maybe medication is something that can be introduced if it's not introduced already. And also talk therapy is really important. So you're able to find out maybe the origin, the onset, the frequency, and also know that you have the support to be able to discuss this. Because I find more and more when people are isolating and they're in their own heads and in their own minds, it seems that there's no way out. You almost feel like, where there is no next step. But it's so important to always reach out to others and always to educate yourself, to get those educational tools, but also ideas, and also hear other people's stories. Are there local groups, either online or in person, that you can join to hear other people's stories, but also to also feel that support and know that you're not alone in what you're going through. So again, thank you so much for writing in. Thank you for all of your strength and your inspiration. Again, if anyone has any questions, please send questions to info@askalexatherapy.com. Also, every Sunday, make sure you check out my Facebook Live at 6 p.m. where I'll be answering also the viewers' questions. You can send in questions through the website, but also live during the Facebook Live. And keep watching the Alexa Show. And again, thank you everyone so much for all of your support, for all of your questions, and for all of your inspiration. Everyone, have a good night, and God bless.